Hey guys, it's Judy from Nutrition with Judy. I hope you guys are having a good week. My name is Judy Cho and I am a nutritional therapy practitioner. I work with my clients to get to root cause healing, and that oftentimes means a meat-based elimination diet to do some gut healing. Okay, so today's video is just a Q&A. My plan is to do these 1 to 2 weeks a month so that I can just answer your Q&As. And so I'm hoping that these Q&As that I've collected from the community will help other people that may have similar questions. So rapid fire, I'm going to go through some of the questions. I'll be doing this again several times a month. And so that I hope that this supports you guys with some of the questions you have. And the reason I'm doing it in a YouTube kind of recorded format is because that's what people requested instead of live. So here we go. Okay, question number 1, is quality salt the same as sodium? And if not, drinking ruminant blood? So if your animal is sourced really well, then yes, I think drinking the blood or having some of the blood from a quality meat source is good option. That's where a lot of our minerals will be. That's why our minerals are normally balanced really well, even though our hair mineral test may not show balance. That's why our blood sugar balance is always better than what may be in our A1C or our blood cells. So is quality salt the same as sodium? So if you're talking about iodized salt, the table salt versus minerals, they are not the same whatsoever. A lot of the iodized salts, they use like sugars, they use anti-caking agents, they use bleach to make it white. So I would take a look at some of my blog posts. I have some videos on Soleil water and unrefined salt. You want to get it from quality sources because iodized salt is just fake processed salt. And most of the iodine is probably not in it. I have a good video with Dr. Brownstein and Lynn Farrell that talks about this as well. Okay, how much is too much Soleil water? Talking someone highly active. Okay, so a lot of my clients will start with maybe 1 teaspoon in the morning. Maybe they'll have one in the afternoon. Some people do up to like 3 tablespoons. I think the sweet spot's about 1 to 2 tablespoons. Figure out what works for you. There are some people in the keto space that say maybe take about 3 teaspoons of total salt throughout the day. And again, unrefined mineral salt. If you're salting your meats with that and then you still have some left over, then add that to your water. I say go with how your body feels. So I think 1 teaspoon to 2-3 tablespoons, again, up to you. Figure out if you're even balanced with the other minerals as well. And I have a video on mineral balancing that you can check out for the details of what all that means. Okay, eating just meat on I swear I can read. Eating just meat at home, but on weekends, I'll eat anything. Thoughts? So Laura and I talked about this on our on our first episode of Carnivore Hate and on the Cutting Against the Grain podcast on all podcast outlets. I'll link to it in the show notes, but you don't want to be doing that because your body's going to constantly trying to figure out, am I burning ketones? Am I burning carbohydrates and glucose for energy? And then if you eat a lot of high meat, high fat during the weekdays, and then on weekends, you kind of just eat whatever you want. The issue is more about, are you going to end up using any of the energy stores from your fat? And then is it going to make you gain weight and have low energy for most of your days? And finally, when you're about to burn ketones, then you're back at trying to rebalance once you're on the weekends, eating more of a carbohydrate rich diet. Please talk about iodine and how to start using it. It causes insomnia and tips. So iodine can be a stimulant, so you want to take it in the morning. I would say you can do the skin patch test. The thing with the skin patch test is there are kind of environmental factors that can make the test not super conclusive. One is like dehydration. If your body's not that hydrated, the environmental air, is there more humidity in the air? So all of these things will impact it. It's a kind of like a DIY cheap way to kind of test it. But the best way to really test for sure where your iodine status is through a labs called Hakala Labs. They do a 24-hour urine test to see how much of the iodine you're excreting, because you can only test iodine through urine, and that's why it's not even on the hair mineral test. And then you can even test how much bromide you're releasing. So it's really been interesting to see a lot of my clients and even people in the community send me their results from Hakala Labs and see that a lot of them are like, as they are starting to supplement iodine, you see some of the improvements, but they still have to raise their levels. And then some of them are still excreting a lot of bromide. So Again, this is where I think we have missed the mark with iodine. We really need some. Now, it really depends on your own individual health to figure out if you need iodine. I could look at hair minerals, and there's 7 different indicators to see if you may need more iodine. So that would be one factor. But otherwise, you can do the test, but I would start with maybe 2 drops in the morning. I think it's a safe way to do it. Some people split it up, 1 in the morning, 1 in the afternoon. You want to do some Soleil water with it because you need to do a saltwater flush with the bromide that may be released from the iodine because it'll displace it. And then you also may need to take some selenium because selenium and iodine also work together. Again, there's a mineral balance episode I have that you can also take a look at. So start with 2. I recommend typically people get up to 12.5, but maybe not everyone needs that. That's maybe 6 to 8 drops of the 2% Lugol. So that's not 5%, that's 2% of the Lugol's potassium iodide. And then I say, in case you're detoxing a lot, you may want to do 2 days of not taking anything. So you kind of give your liver a rest and you just kind of let your body relax. I have a free iodine support that I kind of give out to people. So if you just send me an email or leave me in the comments, I will send you the link to that. And then you may just take a break. You will have some symptoms. So one of the signs of people getting kind of replenished with iodine is breast fullness. So your breast won't get saggy. So that's another thing. But so many good benefits. And some people actually get like little pimples that randomly come out, and that could be the detoxing. But in general, I've heard very good things about it. And I will just eventually have like a blog post written with the science and more. But you can check out the Dr. Brownstein video as well as Lynn Farrow's interviews that I've done with them that explains some of the nuances about iodine and why we shouldn't fear it, even though there are people in the holistic space that say iodine is not something we should be touching. I beg to differ because 1, T3 and T4 are made from proteins and iodine alone. Okay, someone is asking about higher fat, doing protein sparing modified fast. Nothing is helping this person lose weight. So I would look into minerals. I would look into your hormones. Are you eating enough, right? So are you eating 0.8 grams of protein in terms of your total body weight or your ideal body weight? And then are you eating 70 to 80% fat? You can consider trying extended fasting about 36 to 48 hours and seeing if that'll help. Now, if you have adrenal stress, if you have eating disorder history, any of those things, you may want to pause on that option. You may be just stressed with even thinking about things are not working. And we have an upcoming, Laura and I have an upcoming Cutting Against the Grain podcast where we talk about patience and how sometimes we need to be patient for healing. So yeah, I would just, there's different levers you can use, but I would just hone in on the diet. Don't worry too much about the weight at first, and then just give it time and see if you can find other levers to then see if the weight will kind of come off. This person also said that her blood pressure is high. She feels horrible. She can't sleep and she feels depressed. So if you feel depression, I would look into, again, the stressors. If you have high blood pressure, I think you're a good candidate for the HTMA, to be honest. If your lithium is really low, that can actually cause depression. Your copper is imbalanced, that can also cause that. If you are eating a lot of organ meats, you may want to chill on that for a little bit, to be honest. So there's so many factors without working out with you, without all of the nuances. I can't really say what's going on. Normally gut health, being able to eat a meat-based diet and healing your gut will help so much of any emotional imbalances, and same thing with eating higher fat. Okay, some of you guys are asking like 10 questions, so I'm going to skip through that just to be fair. But one of the questions from the same person, one of the people that I just answered the questions is dangers of gluconeogenesis, long-term chronic stress. Watch my mineral videos with the stress. It is not that you are in gluconeogenesis that's causing that. That can be one reason, but it's really like the stress state. We are living in really stressful times, so we can't really blame the meat for that happening. I would highly recommend my mineral and stress 2-part series video. How to correct metabolism the right way. So one of the ways is nourish the body well. Make sure that your body is properly nourished so that you're getting the right amounts of nutrients to fuel all the different organs and systems in your body. Once you're kind of at a base where you're eating sufficient calories, macros, your symptoms are good. And then you could start kind of figuring out if you want to add exercise that can stimulate metabolism. You could do like cold water therapies. You can do even extended fasting can help increase the metabolism, but get to a place of healing first before focusing just on metabolism. Am I talking too fast? You guys have to let me know next time. What if salt makes you dehydrated and constipated? Check your minerals. So I would make sure that your water is not dead water. So make sure that you're not just drinking purely filtered water with no minerals. I mean, that is going to cause havoc on the minerals within your body. Make sure you are breaking down your foods, right? So you need chloride from salt to produce hydrochloric acid, which is the stomach acid. You also need zinc, which also needs enough hydrochloric acid to break down your meats and then absorb all these minerals. So if salt is making you dehydrated, I think there's an imbalance with your aldosterone. I'd kind of take a look at that, consider potassium. But again, check out my mineral video and it'll answer a lot of these questions. If you take HCl supplements and get acid reflux, what does that mean? So one, it can mean that you're not ready to take that much hydrochloric acid. You might have to take it slow. I have another digestive enzyme or gut support for the upper GI that's not hydrochloric acid. There are some people that should not be taking hydrochloric acid. And I think this is another thing that a lot of specialists don't talk about. But for one, if you are taking immunosuppressants or, blood thinning medications or some types of medications, it is not beneficial to be taking hydrochloric acid because the acid can just make things worse in the gut. This is where you should work with a practitioner. But if you are getting acid reflux, my guess is either you're eating too much fat that your body just can't digest that well. You may have to work on the small and large intestine so that the flap between the stomach and the small intestine will empty out faster, and then it won't come up, but it'll go down. So there's all these different things. You can also look into a product that I sell called Megaguard, and that has other digestive supports for H. pylori in the upper stomach without using hydrochloric acid. It's more natural herbs and stuff. So you can take a look at that. But if you're getting heartburn all the time, you may have to change the macros of your meats, meal times, maybe smaller meals, just ways to kind of get over this hump of having low stomach acid. And then over time, you can have more stomach acid. Now, if you're taking the medications, you may need a pause too. How do we get all the nutrients we need? So one, work on your gut. Even if you eat the most highest quality meats, if your stomach is not breaking it down, if your small intestine is not absorbing it, if your large intestine is not recycling it, all of these things, then it doesn't matter what kind of foods you're eating. Obviously, meat has more nutrients than plants because it doesn't have the anti-nutrients. It doesn't have the toxins from the fertilizers. So meat is your best option, but you still need to work on the gut. It drives me crazy when I hear people say, when you come to carnivore, all you need is meat. Maybe for some people, but I'm telling you, most people I work with need to work on the gut. If you have 40, 50 years of gut damage, I'm sorry, meat alone is not going to fix that. How are you going to break down your meat to produce the hydrochloric acid that requires zinc if you can't break down your meats? So I would just make sure that one, you have good gut health. A great way to start with that would be some hydrochloric acid, some digestive enzymes, and then some probiotics. That will kind of start like the baseline of healing, and then you can kind of go from there. I have a gut healing kit. I'll share it in the show notes. You may not need all of the ones that are listed, but you can take a look and read through all of them and see what is the most beneficial for you. And then from there, eat the most nutrient-dense foods. I'm a little hesitant about organ meats because I don't know if this video is going to come before the video that talks about it, but you can see that. You can also read my Don't Eat Just Beef blog post, and I talk about all the details of nutrients and how to get a broader range of nutrients on a carnivore diet. I think long-term, you don't want to eat just beef on a carnivore diet to ensure nutrient density. Is there a certain number of calories one should consume while breastfeeding and doing carnivore? I generally don't recommend any calories under 16 to 1800 calories for most people. If you have certain days where you eat a little less, that's okay. You're tricking the metabolism. It'll still function at that high level. But in general, I think when you're pregnant, it's just a few extra 100 calories that'll be sufficient. But go with your body, right? So let's say you eat 0.8 grams or 1 gram per pound of ideal body weight, and you're at about 20 ounces of steak plus maybe 2 tablespoons of fat or something like that, and you feel still hungry, honor your body and eat more. My first year of nursing Aiden, my youngest, I didn't restrict at all. And I didn't lose a lot of weight in the beginning, but I cared more about nursing than losing the weight. And then after that, the second, third, fourth, and fifth year, now I will do some fasting if I need, or exercise, or I can maybe reduce calories on some days, but go with an intuition at this point. Make sure to hydrate. Hydration is so key. Bone broth, good waters, all of that will be really good while you're breastfeeding. Thoughts on the keto rash. So sometimes there are many schools of thoughts with this keto rash. Some people think it's like oxalate dumping. It could be. Some people say it's because all of a sudden you're trying to transition your body from producing glucose as energy to then making ketones, and then you get a rash because the body's like hyper acting up. What you may want to do then is slow it down. So whether it's the oxalate camp, the all of a sudden reduction of carbohydrates, all you have to do is slow down the process, right? So if you're reducing carbohydrates from an oxalate perspective, reduce the oxalates slowly. Some people say reduce by 30 grams each week. Some people say with the carbohydrates, then same thing, reduce your carbohydrates slowly. If you were eating 300 grams of carbs, you don't want to go to zero all of a sudden, especially if you're prone to the keto rash. My husband gets the keto rash. So when he does low carb, if he goes down to 50 grams, he'll go down by 30 grams to 50 grams each week, and then he doesn't get the keto rash. Is it normal to have gallbladder pain when switching to higher fat keto carnivore? It's possible if you've been eating low fat. So your liver produces bile, which helps to break down fat, and then the gallbladder is where it stores it. So imagine you eat low fat, then like there's no storing of it. And then if you do have excess bile, it'll get stored in the gallbladder. And then some of that will then create gallstones if it's over there kind of getting sludgy and it's not working. So then once you are eating fat and you are not taking any digestive enzymes or lipase or other supports that will help break down fat or get the bile to be stimulated again, once you start eating the fat, you're basically knocking on the gallbladder. And if it's not used to working, or this bile is like really sludgy, it's not going to work, and that can cause pain. So I'd look into supplementation that may just help kind of break down some of the bile. I don't really recommend removing your gallbladder. It's just every organ has a purpose. Gallbladders can help to break down vitamin D. So it's ideal not to get rid of it. So just work on slowly incorporating more fats. And it's just you're waking up things in the body that can be normal. Just possibly supplementing will be ideal. Okay, blood pressure rising on carnivore. Again, look at the mineral blog post, or I'm sorry, there is a blog post too, but mineral video as well as the kind of stress video. Thoughts on chicken? I like chicken. I think that pork and beef and salmon or fish, fatty fish, have a lot more specific nutrients that are much more nutrient dense than chicken. I think chicken kind of covers everything. So if you want to eat chicken just for variety, there's nothing wrong with that. I wouldn't fear, different PUFAs and other stuff. Now, if you're trying to get really cut and you feel like you have excess fat, you can always try to reduce the PUFAs and see if that'll help. I mean, from animal fats, not the seed oils. We should all remove seed oils. But yeah, I'm a fan of chicken. I eat chicken wings very often, and I don't really worry about it. Okay, changes in triglycerides and cholesterol on carnivore. Okay, so your LDL oftentimes will go up on a carnivore diet, but as long as it goes up with HDL, it should not be an issue. Okay, so I'm going to just show this graphic. This is from Paul Saladino's book. I helped him make this book, so I just need to give him credit before I zoom in. Okay, so this is in his book. I don't know what chapter, but you can find it in there. But what we basically found is that in the Framingham studies, they found that there's like 6 generations that they were checking cholesterol markers and how that affects heart disease for so many different people. And what they found is, yes, if LDL goes up, there is a risk of cardiovascular disease. But as long as HDL goes up with it, there is not as much of a concern. So if you look here, the LDL going up, but then if the HDL is still high, so if you're at LDL 220 and your HDL is at 80, you are not having a high risk for cardiovascular disease. And so you can kind of see that. Now, triglycerides are the floating fat in your bloodstream. I think the standard care's recommendation is that your triglycerides should be 150 and below. Because we don't eat a lot of carbohydrates, I think it should actually be 100 and below. If your triglycerides are below 100, you have less risk of cardiovascular events. This is not medical advice. I'm just giving you my recommendations. So you want your triglycerides to be lower. If your triglycerides are like 110, 120 and you're eating a carnivore diet, I would look at your protein amount. Are you eating too much protein over your fat macros? And that's where kind of we can just adjust macros, and it can be beneficial in terms of the floating fat. So I hope that this answers your question. If your LDL goes up, as long as your HDL is high, that should be okay. Again, not medical advice. And then also your triglycerides, you want it to be under 100. Checking your blood sugar would be a good way to kind of see if you're overeating the protein. You always want to be managing your fat as well, because fat is what supports your hormones. And then your protein supports your thyroid and with iodine. Now, one thing I'll share is that one of the interviews I did that talks about why we shouldn't be eating organ meats, they talk about how there is a correlation with LDL skyrocketing with organ meats. So something to consider if you feel like you are eating organ meats every day, or you're taking the organ supplementation or any of the snacks, and they have a lot of organ meat, a lot of vitamin A, and your LDL is really high, like even above 300s, you may want to back off that and then check your LDL panel in like 3 months and then see if it kind of helps. And if it does, you know. Okay, how long should you take Megaspore probiotics, which is spore-based, which is also the same thing as soil-based, probiotics for gut health? So I don't think just taking spore-based probiotics is the answer for all gut healing. It depends on what you're healing, right? So if it's stomach acid issues, your probiotics are not going to do anything for that. So that's why I have the gut healing kit that kind of takes care of everything from the mouth all the way to having a bowel movement. So if you think about that, so in general, I recommend about 3 bottles, which is 3 months worth. And then I think Mega IgG, which is an immunoglobulin, will help support you taking the Megaspore. So probiotics will kind of repopulate the gut, will give you some good gut bugs, will help you kill off some die-off of the bad. And then the die-off will then produce endotoxins. And so the immunoglobulins help to mop up all of the bad stuff and helps you to release it. So instead of it recirculating. With that said, I think in general, my clients take it for about 3 months. And then if their gut has healed a lot, then we just kind of either we will maybe try a different type of probiotic with a different kind of strain, or we will just kind of pause if they're doing well. And then maybe they don't have to take it for another year or two. And then as long as their diet's clean, environment's clean, then maybe they just need to take a maintenance mode every couple years just in case. So I hope that answers your questions. If you're still having a lot of gut health, even 4 months into taking it, I would look into working on other parts of your gut. Managing carnivore around healthcare coworkers, they think meat and salt are bad. Yeah, I totally understand that. You can eat your meals outside of work and then have like a snack during meals. And so maybe it's just, you're having some beef jerky or some snacks, and then, they're just going to think, oh, she's snacking and it's not a big deal. But otherwise, I think the biggest tip for me is even in my own personal life, I don't really talk about it. So if I'm at a party, I might just eat some of the string cheese, or I'll have, if they're serving pizza, I'll have maybe some of the cheese or the pepperoni on the top. And then no one really asks me like, oh, why aren't you eating veggies or anything like that? But if you don't put attention to what you're kind of going through, then people won't say anything. Oftentimes people will judge like, oh, you're only eating meat or whatever it is, because it's that dissonance, right? So if they think that what you're eating is healthy, then they will have to kind of start looking at their own diet and then feel bad for the way they're eating. So it's easier and almost self-assuring, or, just gives them a kind of assurance that they're okay by being hard on you. So the food shaming is so real and so true. I mean, when my coworkers used to force me to kind of get dessert, like, oh, you're not going to get dessert, don't be a party pooper, that type of stuff. You just have to know that it's not about you and it's about them, and their goal is to make you feel bad. So then you'll eat their way. But if you know and have the assurance that a meat-based diet is ideal, then I wouldn't worry about it. Just human nature, we want people to buy what we believe, because that's how we know the way we think, the way we act, the way we just live is the right way. The more people that buy into our ideology, then we know, okay, the way we're living our life is good. And that's why we're all salesmen in the end of the day, right? So they just want you to eat their way or giving you a hard time because they don't eat that way. And so if you know that, then just feel self-assured that it's okay, it's not you. I hope that helps. Okay, 2 more questions. Best advice to get my brother off sugar. So my oldest, I had no idea anything about nutrition. I would give him the applesauce, the pouches every few hours. I was like, oh, in order for you to grow, I need to constantly feed you. And so it was a transition to get him to eat meat-based. I would say that no matter what, even if, Caleb wants sugar, what I forced him to do is, no, you have to eat all your meat and eat, eggs and whatever other meat-based foods. And then at the very end, he can have a little bit of sugar. That way your body will process the fats and the protein first before even using the sugar. And then it won't be a crazy sugar imbalance, right? Imagine you didn't eat breakfast and you're all of a sudden eating lunch and then you eat a ton of sugar at first. Your blood sugar is going to skyrocket. But if you're eating meat and fat, it'll be kind of like this maybe. But if you add a little sugar at the end, I don't think it's a big deal. So I would do that first. No snacking is huge. I have a nutrient dense guide for kids. It's free, and some sample meal plans, but focus on the meat and the fat first, and then minimize the sugar. So no snacking. If you want snacks, sure, have some string cheese or some beef jerky. But in general, focus on the meat and the nutrient dense eggs, butter, all of that stuff. And then you can then do the desserts or the sugars, and that'll help. And maybe you can move to, the biggest things I'll say is try not to feed them anything with food dyes. They're so neurotoxic. And then do natural sugars. So maybe try the fruits. But sometimes I feed my kids candy and I'm not as stressed about it because in general, they are low carb and they eat mostly meat-based. Okay, I have Hashimoto's and worried about eating too little or too many calories. Should I be? So if you have Hashimoto's, first, iodine. I know that there is so much information about being scared of iodine. Just make sure to do salt flush iodine with selenium. And you can even get your hair tissue mineral tested to see if you need other minerals. But make sure to eat enough protein. Again, your T3 and T4 are converted through making proteins, through eating proteins and iodine. Okay, here's one really quick example. So your thyroid gland, here's iodine, and then there's protein right here. So tyrosine is really the protein we need from our meats that then get broken down to amino acids like tyrosine. So given that, and here's iodine here too for T3, T4. So what you really want to do is make sure you're eating enough adequate protein to manage your thyroid and make sure you're getting iodine to support this whole process. But you also want to make sure you're eating enough fat and supporting the other hormones, right? Because the endocrine system is one big spider web. And so you also want to make sure you're eating enough fats with cholesterol to support your cortisol, your sex hormones. And then also just managing your stress. Hashimoto's is an autoimmune disease which can be affected by gut permeability. Let me pull up one graphic. Okay, so this is a graphic of leaky gut syndrome. I'm totally going to add a graphic like this to the second version of Carnivore here. But this is your small intestine, and your these little hairs are your microvilli or your villi to basically absorb your nutrients. But all of these things are triggers. I'm sure it's pretty blurry to even see this, but your dietary protein, not having enough stomach acid, antibiotics, stress, all of these things can then cause your cell wall lining, so in your small intestine, to open up like this, and then it can cause food to then go into your bloodstream, and that's what will cause autoimmunity, inflammation, malabsorption, immune deficiencies. So what we want to do with Hashimoto's is if there is food or toxins that are going into your bloodstream and then it's attacking now the proteins that are in your thyroid, we want to kind of stop some of this. So I'd work on healing the gut, and then getting sufficient proteins from animal foods, and then supplementing some iodine with some selenium. That should help a lot of the hypothyroid. I don't think you should worry about a certain calories. If you're maybe eating too much, maybe you'll end up gaining some weight. Maybe your energy will slow a little bit. But I would first focus on gut health, kind of cleaning this up so that your cell wall is not open, so that it's not getting into the bloodstream. And one way you'll know is your immune system will be stronger. So you'll go outside, you won't have as much seasonal allergies. You'll just feel better in general. So consider that. And then some iodine and some good quality proteins, at least 0.8 grams of protein for 1 pound of ideal body weight, or 1 gram of protein to 1 pound of ideal body weight. And again, when I say protein, I do not mean meat. I mean protein within a meat. Okay, guys, that is my list of questions. I have over 100 DMs that I have not gotten to, and I'm sure there are a ton more questions. I just want to support you guys with blog posts, videos, interviews, podcasts, and I just don't have as much bandwidth to help you guys one-on-one. And I have a full load of clients that I have to also put my time and energy to. So I hope that this at least gives you some support. Again, I'll try to do this on a pretty frequent basis. If this is helpful, please make sure to let me know in the comments. Let me know if you guys have any other questions for future. If you put it in the comments, I'll try to pull some of them for a future video. Okay, guys, you know the drill. Make sure to eat a lot of meat, take care of your bodies, and because that is the... Okay, guys, you know the drill. Make sure to eat a lot of meat, take care of your bodies, because it is the only place you have to live. If you guys have any questions, leave it in the comments. I will talk to you guys next week. Bye.